Perfect.
Okay.
Weber will probably give it another minute or so and then start.
Yeah, let's give like 1 or 2 minutes and then we can start. I think when we should start now. The rest will keep joining. Otherwise, we may not be able
Makes
to
sense.
match
Yeah.
the schedule.
Let's
Yeah,
let's start now.
yeah. All right. Welcome everyone to this next session of this entrepreneurship Gyan. So I will just briefly give you an idea about this entrepreneurship Gyan, and then I will invite my co-host to introduce the current speaker, PG. So how the entrepreneurship Gyan or TEG in short form was envisioned. I started taking the lead of a startup and entrepreneurship special interest group of IIT Bombay Alumni Association, which was already being taken care by Praveen ji. And at that time, earlier I had an idea for a podcast. From there, before when I was leading this SIG, when I started leading it, and I discussed it with Praveen ji, and we thought, maybe why don't we start something like this? So I already had kind of a podcast in mind, but then something like this was making a lot more sense, and kind of a lot more bringing a lot more people, giving them a platform where they can be mentored by obviously veteran entrepreneurs and different industry professionals and experienced entrepreneurs, but also it's just a platform where people can collaborate, learn, and explore different kind of synergies. So obviously we will have certain sessions that we already have been having, but also we plan to come up with a platform where young entrepreneurs can find mentorship from from the veteran ones or the successful entrepreneurs per se. So with that, I'll just pass on to my co-host Venu, and ask him to formally invite the speaker Preet ji. To you, Venu.
Thanks a lot, Weber. And I think that's always a good refresher whenever we hear the context, how the entire entrepreneurship Gyan initiative started. So I think it's always just a good reminder, how we started the entire series and, what sort of transpired and where they're going through. So now to quickly introduce our speaker for today's entrepreneurship session, we have with us Dr. Preetdeep Singh, who leads the One District, One Product team at Invest India, which is under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry as a part of this initiative. This program sort of aims to put at least one product from each district of the country on the world map. And Dr. Singh here is he likes to tinker with any data, and he's sort of one of the go-to persons when you look at his research and contributions to the social science research network. You'd see him ranked in the top 10%, and he holds a plethora of degrees, I should say. Definitely, I think the most.
I'll do that. I'll do that.
No issues. Yeah.
Yes. So definitely, I think aside from his educational qualifications, he's sort of involved in not just the startup and research space. He also is involved in teaching. Of course, I think Dr. Singh will touch upon some of his teaching, but aside from that, his focus on startups and perception to commitment and fostering the entrepreneurship growth is something that we really wish to highlight via this session. And of course, his insights in blockchain and startup mindset, understanding what are the upcoming initiatives and getting some more insights is something that we really look forward to. So welcome, Dr. Singh, to our session, and the stage is all yours now.
Thank you. Let me just share my screen. Let me know if it's visible.
Yeah, it's visible. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. So hi. I wanted to start with a joke. So the option was either this goes in my intro or this becomes my opening joke. I just really love this. I'm more of a mistake holder in the ecosystem because I've made so many mistakes in the entire scene. And I just love that. I wanted a basic intro to be a slightly more honest take on who, how, and what. So my wife went to IIT. That's honestly the closest that I have been to any sort of an achievement. I did a BA program. I have a BCom honors and MCom. I am also a company secretary. But she doesn't really think much of this part, right? So the only thing that she cares about whenever she has to introduce me is that I have a PhD from IIM. And ऐसा नहीं है कि मैं बहुत मुश्किल से पास हुआ था इन चीजों में. I did a few good things here and there, like I topped here, topped there, and all that. So I think you start by realizing that probably the group here, I'm assuming because it's IITB Alum Association, a lot of them did go to IITB at some point, right? So you all are probably at a level that's hard to relate to for a lot of people, and which puts you in a place where a lot of times we're short on good sounding boards for our ideas, right? You might have an idea, you might want to talk about it, think about it. Us level ke log milne kam hai, which is why usually there's a lot of intermingling within the IIT circles, because you think that at least somebody's understanding me. 3 mistakes of my life: KPMG, EY, and I did a law internship. There was a tie on the third mistake actually, but I thought I'll go ahead with this. I was a consultant. I've been probably a consultant almost all my life. 2-3 years in KPMG Risk. Ernst & Young, I was part of the startup practice. Number of different state startup policies. I don't really want to say that I made them, because a lot of people will come back saying they're not right. But let's just say I was involved somewhere in the team at some point or the other. The fun mistakes I made, I was a radio jockey. That's many years ago, but I really was. As much as I want this to be a LinkedIn post saying how that trained me for life by understanding something, I still don't have a use for it. I don't know what's the use for it, but I was a radio jockey and I had a lot of fun. I don't know if it has any management lessons there. I did a number of startups. I think एक में we made enough money to give that money to our college. So IMA has an award named after me. And I told you I have a gold medal. So recently I was just giving a fancy intro of myself to somebody. So I said, I have a gold medal. We gave college a lot of money. So they named an award after me. And I realized they are thinking I probably gave the college money to give me an award. So I had to clarify. It became very embarrassing. But these are like separate instances of this entire bit. The startups that I had were in blockchain-based vehicle insurance. And usse pehle wala to was a very vanilla consulting sort of a thing. Thankfully, I didn't burn a lot on either. But by the time I was I think 27, I had zero savings. The final fun mistake was leading Startup India. I had gone to hire somebody from the Startup India team for my team at EY. And I was like, we should work together. And this guy's like, yeah, definitely we should work together. I've been feeling the same. I'm like, I think we've got a good chemistry. He's like, yes, I think the same. So I'm like, so why don't you send me your CV? He's like, why don't you send me yours? So ekdam se honestly, mujhe strike nahi kiya, because I don't know how many of you work with the Gen Zs, but a lot of times Gen Zs give you this impression that they will judge you also while being hired, right? So मुझे लगा कि अच्छा ये maybe this is a Gen Z guy, so I sent my CV and I'm like कि ठीक है, so you probably should send me yours. I honestly got to know a lot later that he wanted me to lead Startup India, lead his own team. That could you come over, because their lead was leaving for some reason. But a lot of fun. I think one of my biggest achievements under the Startup India initiative was the angel tax problem. This is, I think, back in 2018-19. This has come to the fore, and this is actually a very interesting problem. Angel tax problem क्या बोलता है कि मान लो वैभव ने मुझे पैसे देने हैं. Vaibhav, let's say, has to pay me for this session. वैसे he's not, but let's say Vaibhav had to pay me 1 lakh रुपए for this session, right? Now, as soon as Vaibhav gives me that money, I am liable to pay 30% tax, right? Now, what if I start a company and Vaibhav invests shares in that company, and that company is basically a shell operating for me, right? So उससे क्या हुआ कि वैभव ने मुझे 1 लाख रुपए दे भी दिए, मुझे उस पे 30% का टैक्स देना नहीं पड़ा, कंपनी को भी टैक्स नहीं देना पड़ा क्योंकि वैभव ने उस पे इक्विटी ली है. So this is not an income for anybody, right? Now the tax department said कि अरे, if there is a startup of, let's say, 5 smart IITians, because you're here, I'm just using this term, 5 smart kids who have only 5 laptops and maybe 3 chairs, how can that startup be valued at, let's say, 10 crore rupees? Because the net asset value, which is basically कितने का सामान पड़ा है, 1-1 लाख के लैपटॉप होंगे. So 5 lakhs worth of laptop, 4 chairs, tables, 10 lakh का होगा. तो 1 crore का मतलब है 90 lakh. There is something not right, right? If you look at it from a tax collection point of view, this theory makes a lot of sense, right? But the problem is that these kids could be working on AI, could be working on facial recognition, could be working on something or the other. And the startup is probably valued at much more than that, right? So how do we tackle that part? So I think that was one of something that I really hold close to my heart, how that is done. There are a number of tax things in startups. 80 IACs where a startup gets tax exemption from paying income tax on profit. Section 56 is the equity wala problem, and section 68 is where the tax department wanted to know Vaibhav के पास 1 लाख रुपए आए कहाँ से. So even if Vaibhav is a bona fide investor in my startup, where is Vaibhav getting all this money from? What if Vaibhav is doing hawala? What if Vaibhav does some random thing for which government of India is not happy, right? So there were a lot of things. The 56 issue is what I consider as something that I had a lot of fun being a part of the team that was involved in facing it. What I like and I currently do, so I'm part of Invest India. I think when you mentioned Invest India is under Ministry of Commerce and Industry. So we're an autonomous body, public, private. It's hard to understand and it doesn't matter much. Just think of me as 100% government funded, but I don't get good pay. So I'm the chief analytics officer because I have a finance PhD. I just understood numbers slightly better. I also lead the One District, One Product initiative. Irrespective of where you're from, there must be something in your district that was very famous, right? It could be Mathura Peda. I don't want to say Patiala Peg, so Patiala Fulkari, right? Kolhapuri Chappals. So it could be anything, and the Honorable PM has a vision that why can't we ensure that each district is known for that product and that product blossoms. So ecosystem better hota, economies of scale, and all the positives that come out of it. I am part of this team. I teach AI to government folks, and it's pretty strange. So I was reading that AI is probably the first technology in many years. Usually, what happens is that in the hierarchy pyramid, the people at the bottom are the first ones to use tech. For example, just imagine your office setting. Imagine right from your CEO to your associate or analyst, whatever is the entry layer, right? Who do you think used WhatsApp first? Most likely it was the analyst, right? Honestly, it's probably the manager, because the manager was getting out of college at that time. But who used WhatsApp first? It's probably the lower layer, right? Who ordered from Amazon or Infibeam as it was, or eBay first? It was probably somewhere in the lower rungs rather than the upper rungs. So AI is surprisingly this tech where the upper rungs are much more into it, are much more interested, understand it slightly better, and are using it a lot more. In that sense, I think it's a very different sort of a revolution that it's bringing up. I do tinker a fair bit with blockchain and startup mindset. I teach at Kanpur and IIT Delhi. Startup mindset I teach at IIM Sambalpur. And honestly, I learn a lot more because of the questions that come around. And blockchain especially, I am an evangelist. I am completely fine if somebody thinks blockchain is a solution waiting for a problem. It's not very far from the truth, right? We've got our own problems. We were at this one event, and I think it was DG Traffic, who was on stage, sharing the stage with some other really smart techies, right? And they were debating, how जब चालान होता है तो उस time पे the challan can be put onto the blockchain, and that driver data will be on the blockchain and this and that. And at some point we realized that digitization is the first big step and hurdle to blockchain. So there are quite a few intricacies involved in letting these people change the way we are. I think AI is pretty much there, but blockchain is not fully there, I would say. A number of initiatives around this that are yet to bear fruit, except of course the CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies, which interestingly don't have any blockchain component. But because blockchain enabled cryptocurrencies and cryptocurrencies were in the gray economy, we had a clean economy cryptocurrency that wasn't encrypted, and we got CBDCs. It's slightly murky, but you can credit blockchain for that part. I really love, and I think it's all of our responsibility also, that we work with artificial intelligence. We know what it is, we know how it is going. So till I think 2 weeks back, whenever I would train folks on AI, they would say, can we make a presentation using ChatGPT? So of course, you have Bing, Bard, and ChatGPT. Bing includes a very constrained version of ChatGPT 4. Bard till last month was a lame duck. But now, they're giving it teeth. They're allowing it to go off the rails, talk a little more. So ChatGPT is broadly the benchmark for whatever it is right now, at least till we get Google's Gemini coming in. And people would ask me, can you make a presentation? So I would tell them, the 3-step way. The first step is, you get text content from GPT. You put that text content in a Word file, and you convert that into outline. And you open that outline in PowerPoint, and it'll create those slides for you, right? So people weren't very happy. I would tell them, okay, you open PowerPoint, you go to VBA, and just paste this code, and your slides will be there. People weren't happy. Now you've got a plugin that gives you a ready presentation, right? And I am honestly now waiting for the next excuse that we all come up with as to why we don't want to use it, right? Somebody was saying the other day ki, 5 years later, you would either be using AI or you would have been used by AI. I would want to be in the former. I think all of us would want to be in the former, but you need to be really tinkering. I'm sure a lot of you would have learned that engineering से ज़्यादा काम Excel आया था. तो Excel use करने में एक बड़ा simple सा उसका rule of thumb रहता है कि you can take printouts of those shortcuts. A lot of websites give you 100 Excel shortcuts that will make your life easier. Anybody on call or your distant relatives who can tell me any of those shortcuts if you recall, right? Very hard. And how do you learn Excel? You learn Excel by doing it. Till the time you don't see an entire night of effort, you are not going to learn shortcuts and collapse that into 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, right? Same as the case with AI. It's very easy to get a paragraph on India's stand on sustainability, but to get a production ready, a delivery ready paragraph on India's stand on sustainability, you'd have to iterate, you'll have to apply your own mind also. And that's a fun thing. We hear of those genie stories that you ask for something and the genie gives it to you and you realize, "Arey, this is a curse," right? Artificial intelligence does not give you what you want; it gives you what you ask for, right? And since the time I've been using AI, I've realized a lot of times we are not communicating what we need, what we want. We are just throwing some words, some keywords that are related, and we are really counting on our subordinates' intelligence or benevolence or fear, whatever you want to call it, to understand what we like, how we like to consume it, and then deliver things, right? So I think the biggest challenge that I foresee with us using AI is our ability to clearly put our own needs, wants, and demands into expression, into text, into instructions, right? And a lot of times you work with AI, you realize कि यार इतने में तो मैं खुद ही कर लेता, which is not wrong, but it requires you to think. There's no substitution for thinking. Try not using it as a very smart search platform. Try using it as a decently smart intern, let's say intern or an associate or entry level employee. 23-year-old graduate is what we understand its mental level to be right now. Give it context, give it background, tell it what worked in the past, and it might be able to give you a good set of ideas and some deliverables, right? Last section, my views on the startup ecosystem. I've been in the ecosystem for about a decade now. I started working before Startup India had come in. One thing that I keep telling people, and I would love for all of you to disagree with me or question me on any of these, right? One thing that I keep saying is, if there is money to be made, money will come. A lot of people say कि इस sector में पैसा नहीं है, उस sector में investment नहीं मिलता है, हम जो कर रहे हैं VCs are not interested, people don't want to invest in this. And I give people a very simple example. I want you to give me 10 rupees and I will give you 11 rupees back tomorrow. Is there anybody in the audience who doesn't want to do it? Let's say there is enough trust and we've accounted for risk and everything, right? I'm sure everybody in the audience would want this scheme, right? Who would not want this scheme? Somebody who doesn't have 10 rupees? Or somebody who's not interested in making money, right? In the case of a VC, both these assumptions are null and void. There is no preferential reason why somebody would not put in money if there is money to be made. If money is not coming in, there is a chance that there is no money to be made there. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. An efficient market theorist would say that you can never find a 100 rupee note on the road because it can't be there. If there is some money, somebody would have already picked it up, right? So if there is money to be made, money will come. Willing to disagree on this. Ideas can't be protected. I'm so sorry. I keep telling this to people. Ideas can't be protected. Patent, copyright, design, whatever, they can't be protected. And I'll give you two more corollaries on that. One, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. Okay, हम सबके पास घर पे, we used to have this, at least I don't know what batches you all are from, but we all had this one diary or this one set of pamphlets of local restaurants where we ordered food from, right? How big is the idea that all food delivery options can be on one place and somebody can order online? Hardly any idea. Okay, chalo, even if you think this idea is good, we all know this idea right now. How many people do you think are doing this? Right? Execution beats idea every day of the week and twice on Sunday. It's Sunday today, right? So understand that they can't be protected and they don't need to be protected. The day you get your first customer, your ideas in the market, yeah. The day you go to hire your ideas in the market, the day you start fundraising, that idea is already in the market. If your idea is so weak that anybody could have done it, तो कोई भी वैसे भी तुम्हें पैसे नहीं दे रहा है ना, then this is not the idea you should be working on, right? There has to be a reason why only you can do this idea, or only you can do this idea really well, or you are willing to put in that hard work to do really well on this idea. You can't protect or do all those things, so don't bother on that aspect at all. If you can't be bothered, nobody else will. If you haven't spent time on your decks, on your pitches, on your financials, nobody else will. If you are a founder of a tech startup and you don't understand the tech, you are bound to fail. Because even if you get some of the best resources, whenever they have to go for a Diwali leave, they're going to tell you कि actually na Google बंद है 3 दिन के लिए, and you wouldn't know what to do because you don't understand tech, right? So if there is a core aspect, and you might be the best person in business development, right? If there is a core aspect and you don't understand that core, the best you can ever be is a co-founder. You cannot found a tech startup based on your business development expertise. Customer lana is a next day job. Your core will always be product. We were speaking to Dipender Goyal from Zomato, and he said 65 to 70% of his time still goes in that stupid app. I would have thought his time goes in the social media posts because they're really cool. The app isn't as cool. But he's like, I spent 70% of my time on the app. मैंने तो मजाक में बोला भी, मैंने कहा भाई तो कुछ और कर ले, क्या पता ऐप सुधर जाए. But genuinely, I think that sums it up for you. It's now a listed company. The founder spends as much time on that one core tech product. You need to go head first, deep dive. जितने भी इसमें लगाने हैं euphemisms लगा लो, but you need to go. There is no other way to do this. I say this a lot of times. Contracts are for bad times. In good times, they don't matter. Co-founders will always say, "अरे ये तो मेरा दोस्त है, ये तो मेरा भाई है, अरे हम साथ में कर रहे हैं." In your case, अरे ये तो मेरा विंगी था, ये तो मेरा रूमी था, इसके साथ तो मुझे भरोसा है, ये है वो है. Folks, it didn't end well for Rahul Yadav. He's your place, right? It didn't go well. It never goes well. Things go south. You are suddenly counting कि उस दिन कॉफी के पैसे मैंने दिए थे. You are suddenly counting that I have always been taking my car out. तुमने तो कभी तेल भी नहीं डलवाया. What about the risk and the wear and tear? It will not work out. Just have a contract. Just have a contract. And a contract I've used slightly loosely. Just have at least a formal, clear understanding of what happens in what case. What if tomorrow your startup gets bought on the condition that the other co-founder has to be retained, right? How are you going to value your shares in that case? How are you going to value your contribution in that case? Do you still want to be a part of it, right? Also, don't be stupid like Steve Jobs and sell all your shares. Keep your shares, bro. You can leave the company, but you can keep your shares. You don't have to make a point of returning gifts in a breakup, as you probably understand. But yeah, just one last thing. The entire process is iterative. The entire process of market study, fundraising, product market fit, customer delight, after sales is iterative. You do it once, you realize in the last step something's not right, you go back to the drawing board, you do it again, do it all over again, and you never stop. Yeah, Vijay Shekhar Sharma never stops. Vijay Shekhar Sharma was standing in front of me in line at Davos, World Economic Forum, right? And I don't know why, maybe he's also middle class, I'm also middle class. We were having it from the cheapest place in Switzerland, right? It was a food truck, a Greek food truck. वो खाना उसको भी नहीं समझ आता था, मेरे को भी नहीं समझ आता था. He's standing in front of me, he orders whatever he ordered, I don't remember as much. He turned out and he says, India hota to Paytm kar dete. And I'm like, bro, do you always keep thinking of this? Like, तुम्हारे दिमाग में भी पैसे आते हैं तो टिंग 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 चलता है क्या कि Paytm receive? He's probably like that, and it keeps on going like that. You never get out of that loop unless you're Bill Gates, where you've got passive income coming in, passive wealth. As a founder, you will always remain in this iterative process. And I like to give people this example ki, let's say we have to make a pram, a stroller, baby stroller, right? Perambulator if you want. And you are thinking, okay, the pram will have these 10 features and it will be a high-end pram, it will be smart pram. You can put a brake, you can track it, it has GPS, this, that. And you're thinking of a price point. And you go to, okay, the price point is going to be 50,000 rupees, right, for that pram. You then, of course, go to how many people in India can afford this pram, right? And let's just stick to Government of India figures. So Income Tax Department gives you income slabs. कि कितने लोगों की income किससे ऊपर है. So let's say you take an assumption that somebody who's had a baby in the past 5 months, they've got other expenses also. What percentage of their income are they going to spend on the pram? Let's say they spend 20% of their monthly income on a pram, right? Which means their monthly income is 2.5 lakhs per month, right? Which means they're earning 30 lakhs per annum, right? 30 lakh per annum agar wo earn kar rahe hain, it means India has about what? I think 1,50,000 people, let's say 5 lakh people who earn 30 lakhs per annum. And these are numbers available on income tax website, right? Now you've got these, whatever, 5 lakh people who earn in your bracket, right? And then you also look at how many of them are having babies. A lot of people earn this sort of money when they are in their 40s or their 50s. I'm sure, IIT Bombay, you are all thinking, itne ka to mera package placement ka tha jo choda tha. So sure, some of you, okay, great, right? But most of the janta earns this sort of money when they are towards the later stage, when they've had their babies and their pram moments, right? Now, if that period has passed, then you're looking at people who are either in that 50 to 60 range where they've got grandchildren, or you are not targeting these people, or you're looking at, people who've earned this money till 40, right? What's the next thing you do? The next thing you do is you figure out, okay, I am going to open India's best showroom, right? That is when you realize ki, yaar, these 5 lakh people are spread over 25 cities. What am I going to do? How am I going to address all of this? I can't have a store in all these cities. So I will have a store in, let's say, only 5 cities that allows me to reach out to, I don't know, 1 lakh people, right? And I don't know how many of those 1 lakh are actually having those babies and, have that money and all. And you realize ki, yaar, 50,000 ki pram shayad mehengi hai. And, as soon as you realize ki 50,000 ki pram pe, 50,000 ki pram pe, you're not breaking even. You need to go back. What did we start with? We started with a pram with 10 features. Maybe you now need a pram with 5 features. And then you do the entire exercise all over again, right? Pram is just one example. I do this on a longer workshop. But, you will always be in that iterative loop. Rat race or whatever, Ferris wheel, whatever you want to call it, you will always be there. I think that's that from my side. But my prediction on the future is everything will change. And we are the ones who are supposed to bring about this. Which side are you going to be on? I am on X, LinkedIn, and I am here for any questions and answers. I'll stop sharing my screen. Over to you, Vinu Vaibhav.
Yeah, perfect. That was really insightful. And I think a suggestion that you may also want to try for stand-up comedy, because, a lot of IITians do try for it. And I think you will be a big hit. I'm pretty sure you'll be a big hit.
I'm starring this.
Yeah. Okay, so any questions from the audience you may want to put in chat? So I already have a question. I don't see any question in the chat. So I will love to start with a question of mine. So that would be that, how do you think, Startup India specifically, their programs might be useful for young entrepreneurs, to begin with, but also to someone who is looking to scale up and things like that. Maybe 3 different levels you can talk about, briefly.
So how a government of India defines a startup is within 10 years of incorporation, which means if somebody is applying for it right now, they should not have been incorporated earlier than 2013. Okay. So one is that 10 years of incorporation. Second is less than 100 crores in turnover. We figure here, if you are at 100 crores now, you really don't need our help, right? Okay. When you are starting, one, there are a number of courses available on Startup India, collated by India's unicorns, right? So it's not like a theoretical thing. It's not a professor. No offense to professors, but you've got people who actually do this stuff, who tell you ideation hota kya hai, kitna iterative hota hai, what is it that you need to be doing, what do you need to take care of, how do you take it forward, what are the roadblocks, what is funding, and the entire bit, right? So that's one. That's the first thing. Second, you get an access, think of it as the yellow pages of all incubators and startups located in and around you, right? I always suggest this to college students. IIT Bombay, you've got Sign, right? So you are, of course, a very lucky bunch, right? A lot of colleges might not have this well endowed an incubator, right? Which means, if you're located in, even if you're just chilling in the Hiranandani Starbucks, just drop by and visit Sign, and they will tell you a lot more about what startups are doing, what sectors look like, what sort of problems are being solved, right? You can check out the ideation pages where, so on a number of different sectors. So for example, just think of Olympics, right? There are, I think, a set of 300 problem statements that are open for anybody to solve. So one could be, how do we spot talent in tier 3 and rural areas? Second is, how do we ensure proper diet, right? Third is, how do we ensure that our mothers to be, women who are yet to deliver their babies, get enough nutrition that their children stand a chance to become future Olympians, right? So as there are sort of like more than 300 problem statements, right? Once you've done that, you can apply for the Startup India Seed Fund scheme. I think they give you a grant of up to 50 lakh rupees and debt for 20 lakh. Ulta bhi ho sakta hai, one of these numbers, I'm sorry. But you get this money, right? Based on just your idea and that incubator willing to say, I am willing to take a punt on this. You get a convertible debt and you get debt for that 50 lakh, 30 lakh thing. So based on that incubator, so you need to convince a few people, of course, right? You also get mentorship through the Mark platform. It's IIT Bombay, so you all are lucky because you've got a wonderful alum network. A lot of colleges don't have access to people who've done this once. You won't believe, Vaibhav, the number of first generation entrepreneurs in the startup ecosystem is just crazy. It's just crazy. 50% of my startups today don't come from my tier 1 cities, metro cities. They're not in Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai, Kolkata, Pune, Chandigarh. They are from Jharsuguda. They are from Raipur. They are from Raigad. They are from Yavatmal, right? So I just love to share this one story, with people. A lot of you would have, traded chalo chodo kya hi bola, would be aware of Ethereum, right? So Ethereum went from a proof of work to a proof of stake algorithm. So proof of work mein kya rehta tha? There used to be expense of a lot of computer energy, which is electricity, and it moved to a proof of stake, which is, if we all have some stake, we are willing to bet that stake on this transaction. Technical difference, basically energy usage for each transaction to be verified went down by 99%. Okay. Anybody in the audience, anybody, and you can play this question with a lot of your friends also. Where do you think was the highest impact in India, right? And first answer, without thinking, hip shooters will say Bangalore. Yeah, Namma Bangalore would have the highest impact. Fair. Let me not disregard and throw that answer and insult you right away. Let me give you some time to feel insulted. Second option, bro. Third option, bro. Fifth option, bro. You give people 20 options, right? The biggest impact, like where there was a massive closure of companies, Kondanandgaon. How many
Okay.
people know on this spot Kondanandgaon hai kahan? Kondanandgaon is Chhattisgarh,
Okay.
right? And why Kondanandgaon? So Chhattisgarh is a power surplus state with very low prices of electricity. So proof of work, Ethereum verification ke warehouses, Kondanandgaon mein aasan the. And because they had engineering colleges, those kids were really tinkering around with this stuff. They had created companies to verify these transactions. They were mining, right? Different sort of mining in Chhattisgarh, right? And it probably wouldn't come. 45% of my startups today have a woman entrepreneur on the board, like which means either a co-founder or a director. 45%, right? Now, a lot of these people honestly need role models, need resources, need mentorship, need funding. I've taken care of funding. Role model, so I'm guessing you all would be the best people for that. Mentorship, I've taken care of. Let me tell you one more thing. You register your startup on the Startup India platform. It's a government certification, takes less than a day. It's a self-certification form. And you get access to Amazon cloud credits for free, call center credits for free, Vakil search, X number of credits for free, consulting credits for free. You get, I think, Digital Ocean karke hai. They give some cloud space, cloud storage space for free. There are a lot of free resources that they will give for free. You can also send a connect request to a network that is, I think, over 5 lakh strong. So that's about 1,15,000 startups. 1 lakh are active, 15,000 who are probably out of the startup game now. 1,000 incubators, many evangelists, mentors. It's a 5 lakh strong network. Drop them a line. You'd be amazed at what all you can get from the ecosystem free of cost. You'll be amazed at that, right? Regulatory changes, lots of regulatory changes that keep coming out, environmental law relaxations, labor law relaxations, no inspections in green as well as yellow category businesses. So see, if you're making explosives, you will still be subject to inspections, right? But if you're making software, none of that for you, none of that at all. If you're producing something that is not a heavy pollutant, no inspections for you. Nothing of that sort. They are willing to take a self-certification, right? So a very strong trust-based regime on that front, right? What else am I forgetting? Yaad aayega to main bata dun, but lots of benefits across the board for startups. Yeah.
And the same is for scaling as well, or this is just for the seed funds and just the starting up of your of a startup? Or
Yeah, scaling as well. Scaling as well. Yes.
The support is for scaling as well.
Okay. Yeah. So we do a fair bit of active matchmaking with funds that might be willing to look at you. There are some funds that are listed, and regular events where you can actually pitching workshops also on that front. So that also happens. You can get in touch with mentors for specific scaling up. The 1 to 10, 1 to 100 sort of a thing. You can get in touch with mentors specifically for that phase also. A lot of international exposure. So startups who've done some bit in the Indian market and think that their product is also suited for, let's say, US or Finland or France or Singapore. Singapore FinTech Fest, Business Finland, Invest New Zealand. A lot of these bridges are there where if you're looking to establish a team somewhere outside of India also, we'll help you with a soft landing platform there.
So this is quite interesting, particularly for someone like me who is kind of interested in cross-border incubation. So a lot of people come to me and said, okay, I will love, and I have a product which is working well in Asia, but can we move to Latin America because that has been my working region, and can we do that cross-border incubation? So what I understand that there might be people in Startup India, mentors who would help startups to bring that connection very easily. That is what you are getting, right?
Yeah. So let's say if there is a Finnish startup, French startup who wants to come to India. We've got a startup bridge signed with them, which means they come in. We tell them, okay, there are these 5, 7, 10 incubators where you can take 6 months of incubation free of cost. There is a co-working space, which is basically sitting space with internet and all free of cost for, let's say, the first X number of months. And the same they do for our startups there. Soft
Okay.
landing. You know, what are the 5 regulations you need to take care of?
Okay.
ये 10 CA हैं, professional service providers हैं, ऐसे rates पे मिल जाएगा, subsidized मिल जाएगा, government scheme है. That soft landing, it's a mutual thing. It's a very strong sort of a thing that we're very proud of on that.
Okay. Okay. Great. Because there are a couple of people from, outside as well, particularly my friends from Latin America who are also attending. So when you were speaking in Hindi, they were asking me, which language is this? So I had to text them that, this is Hindi. So, don't worry, because that has been my working region. So, at times a couple of my colleagues, attend from there as well. Okay. That was, very interesting to know, Preet. So Venu, would you like to take the next question from the audience maybe?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of questions here anyway. So we'll start off with one of the questions which asks us about the success of the initiative and future directions on one district, one product. So any insights you can share, what's coming up, because it was very interesting to listen to some of these bits, how we're really shaping at the ground root level, but I'm sure people want to know what's coming up now.
Sure. So there are 3-4 things in this. So, you think of let's say an artisan, right? And you're thinking, okay, Jamnagar Bandhani. It's a sort of tie and dye cloth, right? That they do, right? The first few thoughts that we all would have would be cut out the middleman. Put them on e-commerce. They can sell to India. They can sell to the world, right? And give them online payments, right? We learned one, for an artisan, a return is not a matter of money. So let's say, somebody makes Khurja black pottery and, they send that black pottery to you and you return it for whatever reason. We return stuff from Amazon all the time. For an artisan, it is a matter of pride that somebody returned their product. It's not the money. It's not the reverse logistics of 100 rupees that they have to pay. They're like, how dare somebody return it? What's wrong with it? And till they don't get an answer, they're not happy. A number of artisans tried getting on e-commerce and left on their first return. One. Second, people who are buying online are not looking for a 5% bargain on handcrafted products, which means that, if you're thinking, okay, my ceramic glasses are for, let's say, 100 rupees, I'll sell them for 90, right? People are not really willing to turn to the person offering 90. They're willing to turn to the person offering better quality, right? 90 has another problem. As soon as you get one return, your break-even point goes for a toss, right? So that was the second thing. Third thing we realized was that there is a reason why there is an entrepreneurial layer between the producer and the consumer, right? And this is that layer that handles pricing, that is, on the it's called something that sale platform portal. I'm forgetting the name, but basically that seller dashboard that e-commerce offers you, these people have to remain there so that they can take an order, process an order, do that entire bit, right? So that was the third thing. There is a value that an entrepreneur is adding here. Fourth, and I love this example. You all probably have a nice fancy phone, and your phone would have come in a box. Now, if you are like me, or like millions of Indians, you would have saved that box somewhere in that Almira and never looked at it. You never look at that stupid phone box, but always thinking, maybe one day I will need this phone box, right? You have your phone with you 24/7, right? All the time you have your phone. It never goes in the cupboard also, right? But you still have that. And companies spend a lot of money in unboxing experience. They hire celebrities, they hire influencers for unboxing, right? Compare that to a pashmina. Pashmina is Indian cashmere, right? Really fine, fancy shawl, right? They give it to you wrapped in a newspaper sometimes, or a plastic bag sometimes, right? The transparent, simple plastic, right? Whereas your storage to usage ratio of a pashmina is probably 9:1. 90% of the time it's stored. And you want it to be stored in a way that it's safe from bugs, it's safe from other things, and you use it 10% of the time. It's really pretty, but you need to keep it there, right? What are we doing for that packaging, right? So one of the biggest learnings in this entire journey for me has been packaging is so important. And the Japanese have done a wonderful job at it. If you've been to Japan, consumed their products, you would know Japanese packaging is amazing. We need to really up the ante on that. So one of the things we look forward to is this. Second, I don't know why people are willing to spend 5x, 7x, 10x at airports. right? But they are. I'm a finance PhD. I don't have a problem with it. We are probably going to expand the availability of ODOP products in those locations. We will be having ODOP awards looking at how certain state and union territories have done more to promote these products at the district level, at the state level, and sometimes with Indian missions abroad as well. So I think those are the things we'll be looking forward to in one district, one product.
I think that is very insightful. When you hear some of these real life examples, I don't know how deep you would have thought of it, but when you start thinking of these, you're able to directly connect and say, oh yes, that makes a lot of sense. And the next time I think I'll see a box in my Almira, I'll remember your example again. So I think that's very, very realistically connectable. So that's a good one. I think just one question that comes up, and I see Pankaj has asked this question out there. So when somebody thinks of entrepreneurship, and you've mentioned this earlier, that you promote a lot of these rural developments, and considering the grandiose plan that having one product in each district. So a lot of our districts are in tier 3 cities. So how do you sort of nurture these? How does somebody, say, for example, as a person, identify that, I want to be involved in a startup, or I want to start a startup? What are those typical barriers? Of course, we've heard the other side where you're able to step in to help out, but as a sort of founder, or as a common man, how do people go about that decision?
So the good thing is that we have at least one startup from more than 650 districts of the country. Lakshadweep may be, North Andaman, South Andaman may be hai. There are some regions where we don't have a startup yet, and there are about 750 districts, so about 100 total districts where we don't have a startup yet. One of the first things is that this is an option, right? I think that is one major barrier, which is more of something that you have to just learn from reading newspapers, news, or somewhere. This has to be an external input to you if your parents are not into it, if your ecosystem is not into it, that this is a real option. So that's barrier number one. Second, thankfully we've got incubators, but I think a lot of people are still hesitant about reaching out to an incubator, going to an incubator. Like they're like, what do I do there? Like, who do I meet? Is there like a help desk in an incubator that says, may I help you? And then they guide you around. Like, how else would that be? So I am an introvert, and I find it very difficult. I find it difficult to be at a wedding, right? And I can imagine if somebody doesn't know what an incubator is, they find it very difficult to just go in and ask a question. That's how it is, right? Third thing, usually people had was funding. How are they going to get any money out of this? Thankfully, a lot of state governments, union territory governments, and the central government have some of the other scheme around this. Fourth was they didn't know whom to ask. So there's of course a Startup India helpline. There's an email ID you can go to. That is all good. Two more things. 5 years ago there was a major problem, and this is something that would come up when we would do workshops in, let's say, Jharsuguda, in Sambalpur, in Dahej district, in other places, and a lot of people would just jokingly say कि मम्मी कह रही थी कि फिर शादी कौन करेगा तुमसे, right? And as funny as that might sound, it was a genuine problem. कि who wants to give their child in marriage to somebody who's just a founder, right? Guy, girl, whatever, doesn't matter, right? And this was like a major problem. So I think one of our biggest achievements as Startup India has been the mindset change, where people are willing to accept that this is a valid career path, that this is like legit. It's not that you're just whiling away time doing nothing and saying startup kar rahe hain, founder hai, abhi soche nahi hai, sochenge. So that I think has been a major mindset shift that has come about in how people had barriers and now they move on. I think a tinkering mindset, because a number of people who were in college did not go through Atal tinkering labs when they were in school. Now, of course, we've had that, but we've got like about 5 to 7 years worth of students who probably did not get enough tinkering, and they probably will find it a little hard to innovate in manufacturing, because that requires you to actually break things open and not be able to put them together. So that's how you innovate and say, isko jod do, aise karke, right? So I think that is just some gap that we'll be fighting.
And I think just when you mentioned this idea, when you start thinking of it, right, shaping things at the grassroots level, how do you sort of, what is your view on taking this to, formal schools and education systems? Like, we study about science, right? We study about, say, commerce, we study about biology, and all of these are subjects, history. But say entrepreneurship as a subject is something that we face only in colleges, and that too there's a certain category of colleges. For example, like you teach in IIT Delhi and IIM Sambalpur. Those are those tier 1 or tier 2 top colleges where you're getting the exposure. But what about common sort of students or somebody who's studying, say, from some of these villages and sort of is not directly impacted by those programs there? Like, what about them? What about imbibing these as kids? What's your view on that? Is that something that we should do, or you see that already happening?
Venu to engineer hai na?
Yes.
So 11th, 12th, commerce actually gives you an option for taking up entrepreneurship. Not like taking up entrepreneurship, studying entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So ये थोड़ा time से चल रहा है, but science के लिए नहीं है. And science does equip you to tinker. Commerce doesn't equip you to tinker. I am a hardcore commerce. Trust me, my whole life I have never asked why. Right, and that's of course one of the reasons for our matrimonial harmony also. But I tell all of you on call would ask why. You would question status quo. As a commerce, you give me any set of constraints you want, and I am going to navigate a path through it, no matter how difficult. I am a company secretary, right? I did my CA thing also. We do this, right? So the gap that comes in is I, who will never question, am exposed to the idea, concept, and opportunity in entrepreneurship. You, who would question, tinker, are not exposed, right? So it becomes very hard to bridge this gap together. One of the most successful experiments that I know of has been that in Gujarat University. So they came up with a BTech with minor in entrepreneurship. And what they did was, instead of creating like a straight jacket, 3 credit, whatever, they said you have to complete 100 points, right? And how do you complete 100 points? You have a menu of 1000 points. So you can do 30 points worth of internship in an incubator. You can start a startup worth 50 points. You can do a course worth 10 points. There are 7 such courses. You can help out at a local fab lab worth 50 points, right? So they've created that. I think that has been wonderful. That has been one experiment that I just love. AICTE and the National Innovation Ranking Framework, they've been trying to push this a lot more now, because NIRF has component for, do you have an incubator? Do you have a professor dedicated to entrepreneurship? Do you have curriculum mandatorily including entrepreneurship? Are there activities around that? And I think in the next 3 to 5 years, we should start seeing some prominent founders, who would have come through this system. It takes about 5 years for education and the news to be bridged, unless it's a paper leak mamla. So I think there would be a 5-year gap in this entire thing. But I'm definitely hopeful that in the next 3 to 4 years, we will see people who've come from this system, and we'll be able to appreciate it a lot
more. No, good that Preet you mentioned it. In fact, for the inaugural session, I invited Mr. Ramanan Ramanathan, who was the first director of Atal Innovation Mission, and he started talking about tinkering labs, how this idea came up, how it was set up, and what changes we are seeing. But he did mention that opening a startup, for example, now is very easy as compared to it used to be like 3-4 years back. So I would like to know from you as well. For example, I'm a layperson. Let's say I'm from a village in Uttar Pradesh and I want to open a startup. I write an email to, obviously I will just write an email to Startup India or Invest India or someone. And what would be the process after that? How would I get support from there as well? So maybe
Sure.
you can tell a bit on that. Yeah.
Sure. So I think the first thing we tell you is, do you know what you want to solve? So that's the first thing that we tell you. Assuming that you know that you're wearing these specs, that there are specs that will give you, let's say, scratch resistance at a much lower price. Let's say that is your value proposition. What do you do? One, we put you in touch with the local state authority, state startup cell. So UP has a startup policy where they give you, I think, a 10 lakh type ka grant starting up mein. If they think you're not ready, they will give you a 25K per month ka stipend. If you are in college or just in that age group, they will give you a stipend just to figure things out. They will put you in touch with a local incubator who will tell you a lot more about this. You will get some pro bono professional compliance services. So a CA, CSW or a lawyer will be willing to at least incorporate or give you some pro bono support, free of cost, just to help you out with that bit. I think apart from that, it will more be on the benefits available to everybody at Startup India, and then that comes in. But on a real case, I think it will be a conversation with a person, conversation with an incubator, a reality check, and a compliance professional who will tell you a lot more about it, and then you start that formal journey after that.
Okay. No, that is good to know, because a lot of people, they for example, I have been associated with incubators as well. So a lot of them find contact somewhere, and they just directly try to reach out. Can you help? I saw a post of some grant. Can I get that grant and things like that? So I think this is good to know, because there's a well-established procedure within the state governments as well, and person from any state or any body can just go forward with that as well. Good to know that. Venu, do you see any other questions from the audience?
Yes, we have a few questions. We'll take one by Prabhat, who's asking if Startup India Champions 2.0 initiative is sponsored by Startup India.
Yeah, ये ना थोड़ा specific सा question है मुझे ऐसे. Sorry, I don't have an answer to this exactly.
Yeah, okay.
The website can tell you more, but it's a fact-based question. Sorry, I'm not sure there.
No worries. I think we can probably take more generic questions from the audience as well. If people want to know something specific, of course, those details are available. So we'll try to keep it more high level. Any other thoughts you want to bounce off?
Has a question. So typical journey of somebody who's starting, how to know that you are not the one for startups. The best person, Variku. So Variku has written at length about this, Ankur Variku, and he's given this really beautiful table that what is a startup going to offer you and what is a job going to offer you. And it says, are you okay in a non-branded entity, right? So, you're from IIT Bombay, you are used to a brand, right? Will you be okay working for, let's say, a brand that nobody knows of and nobody respects? One. Second, do you have any fixed expenditure and do you have enough capital to take care of that fixed expenditure, right? Because if you don't, then a startup is probably not for you. How well do you handle pressure, and not just random exam pressure? How well do you handle paucity of funds? Funds will always be low in a startup, right? If you don't feel comfortable, if that doesn't give you a kick, and to a lot of people it does give a kick, right? If that doesn't give you a kick, don't go for that. If you like structure versus if you like ambiguity, right? For example, I really like ambiguity. A lot of people I know cannot take ambiguity. Like they can't execute a project with a 2-line brief. They would want to know who, when, what, why, what happens when this, ye, wo. A lot of us want that clarity for the next 25 steps. A startup might not be for you. Working in a startup might be, because then you can add value to the co-founder, irritate him. But as a founder, if you don't enjoy that ambiguity, then that will probably not for you. Barriers to get started, I think the first is finding a good problem. If you've got a good problem to solve, that's it. Then you find a solution, then you find co-founders, then you find money, then you find mentorship. You will find a market because the problem is worthwhile. If you've got a market, the rest will mostly work itself out unless you're doing something majorly wrong. Venu, back to you.
Right. So I think just something that you alluded earlier as well, right? Like, for example, with AI is sort of one sort of domain which we're seeing a lot of. And of course, I think it's become more of a buzzword now. So everywhere you hear AI, machine learning. And in your space, like, how do you see the sort of spread of it? For example, like you'd mentioned, right? Like mining is sort of something that we never expected. Like you said, I think I wouldn't have guessed that the sort of primary impact was some town or village in Chhattisgarh, and that is something that was something not expectable. But what about AI? Like, what are the trends there? Like, where is the primary sort of drivers coming from? What are the impact that we could see, say, in the rural landscape vis-a-vis, say, the metropolitan areas?
Sure. So, one good way of summarizing the AI thing is that it bridges the gap between below average performers and above average performers. So, Satti or Nukki ke beech ka gap is what the AI does, right? What that means is that a 7-pointer will now be able to perform at 8.5, and the 9-pointer has to continue doing his 9-pointering, or he uses AI and becomes 8.5, right? So AI will always give you a middle of the road solution, right? Think of it as phones and photography, right? Phones democratized photography. What that meant was that pehle, your local studio person who would just click a picture, or anybody, your uncle who had a camera could only click a picture. Now you can also click a picture, right? So everybody who was at the bottom of the pyramid using some bit of phone and whatever went to the second step. What did that do to Andy Warhol? Right? Andy Warhol became even more coveted. He's somebody who clicks with one of his in one of his trademark styles. Those pictures became even more valuable, right? So the first thing that happens is that language barrier goes away. Right now, English does give you an edge in a lot of cases, right? That goes away because when you're talking to AI, the AI is not going to judge you based on your grammar, right? AI will judge you as to how well you can express your thoughts, how well you can understand what is needed and turn those into thoughts for yourself, right? It changes what is required, right? And it starts rewarding people who can think clearly, right? It starts rewarding people who are willing to iterate to get a better output, right? So Elon Musk says that it's a very convoluted theory, but he says that GDP is GDP per capita into population, right? So he says that population is now no longer a constraint because one AI is anyway equal to 3 humans because it's working 3 shifts 24/7, and it's at least twice as better. So one AI is 6 humans, and you can have as many AI instances as you want. So which means infinite productivity. That's one way to look at it, right? Access to mentorship, access to information, access to critiquing, access to review that was limited to people in better, well-endowed places will now be democratized to everybody, right? Somebody in Andaman could actually get, so you can throw a paragraph on, I don't know, quantum, and say that review this paragraph as an IIT Bombay professor with 20 years of work experience and a bad sense of humor, which is IIT Bombay professor, right? And it will give you that review, right? So it democratizes that access. It actually channelizes billions of pages worth of knowledge and gives it to whosoever is smart enough to call for it, right? That said, I think we are still lagging behind in skilling. India is the world's best in terms of AI skills, but I don't think we are ready to really leverage it at that level. I would really urge all of you to encourage people to use it. Use Bing, use GPT, use Bard. They're free of cost, and you will actually have a lot more fun learning with them.
Yeah, I think that is a good takeaway from all of you who are seeing it live on YouTube, but also who are present in the chat. So that would be a good take from a semi-government official from the government of India guy. So that would be interesting. By the way, I had one more question. In fact, you mentioned a figure of the in your working this startup India, you found that 45% of the startups are led by women. That is what you were mentioning, I think. That
They have
was
a female director. It could
yeah,
be a
female director, right?
Yeah.
So very recently I was giving teaching an executive program where I quoted this number that from 2014 to 2023 June, around 141 billion US dollars was the funding, capital invested in the Indian startup, and around 12 billion US dollar, which is around 8.5%, was basically in women-led startups. So I think that you may see some stark difference there as well. That women-led startup are kind of are not receiving that much funding. So I think one thing which I understand, obviously on a country level, is that a lot of these startups are not led by women. But in your your experience at Startup India, how do you see the funding part of it as well? Because as you were mentioning that I was kind of startled to hear that number of 45%, because with my understanding the difference is quite stark, but your numbers were a little bit different. Yeah.
So I'm guessing the number you are quoting is probably for women lead founder.
Yes. Yeah.
So the number I'm
from
quoting
14 to 23 for all the startups in India. I'm not talking about only not talking about in Startup India or
sure.
So
so there is, of course, we need to compare these two slightly carefully. But sad as it is, it's a global reality of the bias against some genders that the VC industry faces. And it's just crazy. If you just look at the research on this, so a lot of times what they would do is they would give the exact same pitch to the male co-founder and the exact same pitch to the female co-founder, and give it to a different set of VCs, which is how you do lab experiments. So this is more
RCTs, experiment. Randomized controlled trials.
Randomized, right.
A/B testing, we call it. Yeah.
Exactly. A/B testing, right?
Yeah.
And it was so disheartening, so disheartening. Same pitch. And what the VCs said? So let's say, a male says that, I am willing to do anything for this. The VCs mentioned high degree of passion. And in some cases, in the beta testing, they mentioned headstrong and opinionated.
Okay.
So, the males would say something like, I am going to hustle it and I'm going to fake it till I make it. In the other one, they would write something as silly as, too much of a feminist, or not willing to take a hint, or, something like that. Exact same content. So I think there is a very strong global bias. It really pains me on this, and we need to start doing things in a more gender neutral way. So I have this one example before I take more time. I think it was the Vienna Philharmonica. Philharmonica is that big band that a conductor conducts, right? And they had, I think, one female participant till whatever year X, right? They made a change that starting year X, you will not be able to see the person. So they will be behind a curtain, and they would be careful enough to say that, women wear heels. So the floor has to be carpeted. You can't make any sound, anything at all. So the people who were shortlisting could only hear the music coming from behind the screen and not see the faces. 40% plus of the band became women.
Okay.
Right? A global bias does exist. As much as I hate it, it does exist. Yeah. And I'm willing to hear any suggestions. All of you are much smarter than I am. If you've got a suggestion on this, I would love to do whatever possible in my capability to bridge this one gap. Yeah. Totally willing.
Good to hear about it. Yeah.
Very
it's not only
valid
about
point
India.
Because when you think of it, right, and this has been something that somehow I can definitely, and I'm sure a lot of the audience also relates to this sort of a gender bias. Different sort of gender roles exist which should not be sort of, say, bifurcated based on it. For example, right, like of course some sort of roles such as a brick mason, and we see all of these on YouTube and other discussions as well, are favoring people who are, say, stronger. But as such, as time passes, you see that this should dilute down. Sadly, I'd say the rate at which it is diluting is definitely very slow. And again, this goes back to sort of where I fundamentally believe, right? Like I believe that change has to come in from the ground level, and primary education is the source of everything. And what if, and this is my suggestion, right? Like what if we start having those discussions with children, at the age of 4 or 5, and we just start entering kindergarten, treating them equally, at the same time being sensitized to the fact that some aspects people can be different, so that ensures people are inclusive at the same time they do not have that separatist sort of mindset when they look at different genders.
Yeah, equality of opportunity and equality of outcome. So as long as equality of opportunity genuinely equal hai opportunity wala, I think that's a wonderful win. Should we take a few questions in the chat?
Yes. Yeah, there is someone who is asking that in the previous series. Obviously, I think he's talking about Mr. Kamal Rekhi ji. He said, well, he did not say
right.
that you should not take you should not take social problems and build startups. Rather, what he was saying is wherever you see any opportunity, just take that. Don't worry that you don't kind of make channels in your mind that I will only do climate startups, or I will only do sustainability startups. I will not do AI. I will not do this and that. But yeah, his question is that do you feel that some AI applications fall in this sustainability or social problems category and things like that? That is what he's asking. Yeah.
I didn't get it. So I agree with the part that Kaval said that social problems should not be solved. So Kaval can say this. He's a lot of fun.
yeah. So no, but he's asking that AI applications can help with this kind of startups. For example, solving social problems and things like that. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. See, when you're solving a social problem, you need to know the difference between your customer and your consumer, right? If you are going to, let's say, educate laborers, right? Please don't expect them to pay. वो पैसे दे सकते तो वो बेचारा laborer थोड़ी होते, है ना? If they could have paid, they wouldn't be doing that manual labor, right? So you need to work out a business model to solve this entire bit, right? So I think what Kamal might have meant, and it's very hard to second guess him, is that don't think of a commercial gain if you want to do only social good, right? I think what he meant was if you're doing social good, make sure you've got a commercial gain angle to it built in from the start. Don't try to think that you will take grants and then solve problems, because that is called an NGO, right? That's a very separate ballgame. We know that a little less. Can we use AI to solve some of those? Hi, yeah, we could, but you can use AI to solve a lot of things. Your take on the above? I told you above. I think I've answered that, because you need to be very clear. If you're just going to do social good, please don't expect to be a millionaire out of it, unless don't expect to be a millionaire out of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think the next question is from the one question is from Vivek. You may want to take, for example, grants available is something you can Google online. I think
but I'll still tell you.
Please.
So Startup India Seed Fund Scheme, that's got a grant, that's got a debt and a convertible equity. At least 3C2 hoga isme se. Your state startup policy will have a grant, a stipend. Your state industrial policy will have a market access initiative, which means a trip abroad. मतलब घूमने वाला नहीं, ऐसे events वाला, जैसे you've got a startup meet, जैसे ये होता है यार, slush. You've got slush. You've got India Israel business meet and all those things. So you get that access. Free resources available. So you've got these three. Maybe depending upon your sector, that ministry might also have specific schemes. You get a list of all startup related schemes on startupindia.gov.in. Vivek ka question le le kya?
Yeah, please. Yeah. So how can we validate our ideas quickly based on demand, prospective market, or novelty?
Yeah, so for me, a lot of times prospective market has been desk research, right? Figure out ki kitne log can pay for it. The example that I gave you for the pram, just figure out how many people in India can pay for it. And please don't get into ki nahi, 3 logon ne return nahi bhari, unke paas paise hain. All that is just fine. Yeah, some of these are probably also dead, right? But get that number clarity first. Theoretical clarity se pehle le lo ki this is the extent of my market. These are the cities where these people are. Now go on. Okay. Novelty. Yeah, novelty is a double-edged sword. If nobody has done this, is there even a market for this? Right? You are probably not the first person to think that midnight sutta delivery should be a startup. Sutta is a cigarette, right? Hostels mein hum raat ko daru pahunchayenge, liquor delivery. Everybody after being drunk has thought of this idea that, why don't the 4 of us start a 1-hour liquor delivery service, only beer, right? Everybody's thought of this and it hasn't come up. You don't see any competition in this. There is a reason for it, right? So novelty is difficult to answer. In terms of demand, So in fact, I was reading this thing by, I think, Professor Ethan Mollick, Wharton Cake professor. Hai.
Great professor.
So he said, you can tell ChatGPT has access to billions of pages on the internet. It has personas. You can tell ChatGPT that please strictly act as a mother of a 3-month-old child. And now answer my questions, where you can check, will you be willing to pay for this? Will you be willing to pay for that? You can further say that, you are an Indian mother currently based out of Chennai, of a 3-month-old child. And will you be willing? How do you buy? Your things that, because I'm an introvert, I always wanted, can I do it on text rather than on call? ChatGPT gives you that option, right? And it's free of cost. So you can actually do that interview phase to figure out gaping loopholes that you would not have understood earlier on that. So AI, theoretical databases, World Bank gives you data, Rajya Sabha gives you data, income tax gives you data, amazing databases that you should definitely be using. Okay, good option ki, AI can moderate the voice and maybe change our faces so that it comes there. My name might be a giveaway though, but okay. How can somebody who's starting in India focused VC fund differentiate themselves? Couple of points. Focus on tier 2, tier 3 cities. Focus founders who are genuinely looking for role models and mentors. Yeah, so you all understand this slightly better than I do, signal and noise. In the second point about finding the right founders, the signal and noise problem is very difficult. It's easy to mimic this signal that, no, we are looking for role models, because even when VCs get those LinkedIn requests, some of them, of course, are pretty dumb, where they say, this is my startup, please give me funding. A lot of them will say, I want to be connected and understand from you where things are going. Everybody's asking for money, right? So the signal noise ratio is a little off for the second one. Focus on tier 2, tier 3 cities. Okay, let me figure out the question again. It says, how does a VC fund differentiate themselves? Okay, let me just clarify. So you're saying a VC fund would want to differentiate themselves because they want the best startups to come to them, right? But there's no other reason for a VC to differentiate themselves other than maybe at the time of fundraising, right? If you look at, there's this thing called Pareto constraints. I'll just mention this here also. PARETO, jo Pareto optimality 80-20 hum karte rehte. There is a thing called Pareto constraints. What Pareto constraints do is, they say that if there is a contracting space, a space to do contracts of 1 square meter, reducing this space will be bad even if this part was not used. Even if all the contracts on a scale of 0 to 1 were only at 0.4, removing 0.8 to 1 will lead to a suboptimal outcome, right? So if a VC were to, let's say, restrict themselves to tier 1 and tier 2 cities, you are reducing the Pareto constraints, increasing the Pareto constraints, reducing the contracting space available, right? It might not be the best one. You could say that, I am going to focus on something that people usually let go of, which is probably women-based startups, right? So that's one major thing. You could say a startup run by differently abled people. That's another thing, because a lot of times these people are shy, not willing to come out. You could also say a startup founded by professors. There's a good reason actually why nobody invests in them. Professors are too lazy to really work. Of course, Weber is an exception, I understand, right? But a lot of professors who do cutting edge research are very happy getting a nature or a science out of it. They don't want that money. Agar paise chahiye to professors thodi bante, hai na? So if you look at a segment that is traditionally overlooked, it might make sense. At the same time, you shouldn't reduce the Pareto contracting space. Tier 2, tier 3 cities, there are a number of startups. One or two ways that I can think of, limited knowledge of Ken personal view, is one, if you have a sectoral expert on board. Very few VCs actually have an established ex-entrepreneur taking a call. A lot of them will be on the board. Vaibhav is an amazing ex-entrepreneur. Vaibhav is, let's say, I don't know, think of Binny Bansal. Vaibhav will be on my board. Vaibhav will have invested in me. But I am the one who's taking all the fund calls, right? So WebHub is available for, let's say, 2-3 hours a month of consulting. If the people who are running the VC fund are smart folks, not just who've been to IIT, but who've also done their own startups in a particular field, that could be a wonderful way to figure that out. If you figure out a mechanism to ensure that all existing government schemes are leveraged, MSME का registration है, startup का registration है, जो grants मिल रहे हैं वो है, all competitions are taken care of, all free international opportunities are taken care of, all corporate challenges and mentorship are taken care of, I think that VC will have a much higher strike rate because a lot of people don't use these things. Okay, if I want to start, what are the taxation legal challenges go through? Yeah, no taxation actually if you want to start up. Also, let's say if you have a house that you bought for 10 lakh rupees and you sell that house for 50 lakh rupees and you invest that 50 lakh on startups, you won't have to pay capital gains tax on that house's sale price, right? So that is actually a tax benefit that you get. How difficult in terms of bureaucratic? Yeah, nahi hai. Just give 5,000 rupees to a CS, CWA lawyer, 5K, 10K, whatever is the going rate, and that's it. I am a company secretary. When I started up, I hired somebody because I was clear that I cannot get into this part. My suggestion to you will be, just like running a call center is not your forte. Sorry, I forgot the name. Piyush, just like Piyush, you wouldn't be running a call center. You might sit around occasionally listening to calls. Please don't try to do the entire incorporation yourself by saving that 5K. Focus on the product. Deepu focuses on the product. Vijay focuses on the product and outsources this compliance to somebody who knows this well. है ना? तो वो नहीं करेंगे.
All right. So I think we are almost there. The time is, it's like we have just 2 minutes. So maybe Venu, you would like to say, final statements.
Sure, thanks, Vaibhav. And this has definitely been one of the most entertaining learning experiences, I should say. Preet, I've never, I've sat through sessions, and we've had the benefit of seeing some of the most learned of professors. But I'll tell this hands on that I've learned a lot in this session. As much as it's been sort of a learning experience, I'd say it's been an entertaining way to learn some of these things. Just those realistic examples, I'd say, are things that, I'll be like, oh yes, I sat through this session where, Preet had come and he'd given me these insights. Next time I look at a phone cover, I'd look at it, I'd be like, yes, I remember this is something that is sort of there in the Almira, but more important is packaging jahan zaruri hai, wahan hona chahiye. Like, for those who don't understand, like some of these things which are necessities for some products are or could be optional for some others. So you need to apply these knowledges in the right areas. I think that's a good takeaway for me. And also seeing that, one of these sort of another way to look at entrepreneurship is now stemmed up in my mind is, like always I'd be like, okay, look at a problem, find the thing that people would pay for to solve. And I think that's it. But now I see that, if I find just a solution, I can then find problems to it as well. That reverse engineering as well can be a mindset to think of areas where an idea can work. So I think this some of these insights, and definitely I think if I have the chance to attend any of these sessions in person, I would love for that. I'm sure the audience as well would really look forward to meeting you in person. And we know we've run out of time. We didn't expect for this from the audience as well. I'm sure people have a lot of questions. So hopefully they can then reach out to you over LinkedIn and then they can get to understand more. So we look forward to that. Thank you, Preet.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a
pleasure.
lot. Thanks a lot, Venu. So final, thanks a lot, Preet, for your time. It has been really enriching. I think the audience enjoy it. I enjoy it. And in case if they have any more questions, I think, they'll feel free to connect. I have already, sent my post as well. You are already tagged there. If they have any questions, they may just, put there in the chat and, you can just take it from there. So thanks a lot, Preet, for your time. And, and hopefully, we will be in touch. I'm pretty sure we'll be in touch, and hopefully, we can do these kind of sessions maybe again in the future, or maybe, as we discussed a bit, kind of co-teaching in some of these courses. Who again, some of them from the audience can attend as well. Yeah, thanks a lot for your time, Preet.